Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That So Much Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
Cassisi Harris.
Hey, how you doing?
David Rios.
How you doing?
And Cassisi's cat joined us momentarily.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where?
We're going to be talking about everything you need to know to get started as a colorist in comic books today. And of course, we are joined by our colorist extraordinaire, David Rios. So we'll be picking his brain throughout tonight and making him regret joining the show.
Okay.
It should be a fun one. Last week I talked about illustrating, and I believe the week before talking about writing. So this is going to be a lot of from our skill sets present, should round out our shows on what we can offer here. We do have a little bit of housekeeping before we get into it. We are currently running a Kickstarter, or not Kickstarter, a Fund My Comic, fundmycomic.com. Just search for Silverline. You can find our current pre-sales for White Devil #2. We have nearly doubled our goal. We have 11 days left to go. So if you wish to get your orders in, go ahead, head to fundmycomic.com and just search Silverline Comics. That's the first one to pop up there. We, of course, do have all sorts of goodies and bonuses that you can do for higher tiers. You can get caught up, get #1, get some alternate covers, as well as add on additional books. If you're missing any, Wolf Hunter comes to mind. And of course, we do have original art as well. If you wish to go ahead and get yourself one of those, make sure to pick those up before they are gone because they are limited. Okay. little bit of a preamble ramble before we get into the tonight's topic, as has become our custom. How was the week for all of you guys?
Busy as always.
Yeah.
Day job takes up most of the time. So.
Fair. Anyone read, play, watch, listen to anything interesting? Anything that you would recommend the audience pick up?
I started watching the Fallout series.
Very cool. How you like it so
That's
far?
interesting. I kind of dig it. I've never played the games like at all, so I'm kind of going into it unbiased and with no expectations whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When I saw some interviews, and I know the writers of the show were big fans of the games, but then one of the leads, Walter Goggins, said that he didn't want to play any of the games beforehand because he wanted to be able to ask why is this happening on set, so they knew what they needed to explain for non-fans.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so now I have questions I'm going to ask. I'll ask some friends. I'll ask Tim later. Like, Tim, why was this like this?
What's that?
What was this all about? Yeah.
I'm more than down to answer. I've played all the Fallout games. 1, 2, Tactics, and then the Bethesda ones. So
I didn't know there was a difference.
Yeah. I'll show you some answers.
Cool.
Started playing Grand Blue Fantasy. Is that what it's called? Relink?
Okay, yeah. I've heard about it, but I have not picked up myself.
It's good so far.
Okay. I know it's kind of like in the same vein as like a Final Fantasy or a Star Ocean, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
I remember Star Ocean.
Yeah, they got remastered and re-released.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Over the weekend, I spent last half of last week and the weekend on the coast, so that was fun. Got back, got my tax return in. Proceeded to buy myself a Ryzen 7 and NVIDIA 4060. We got those installed. And I was going to get the correct display cable to get my second monitor up and running again. But I spent last night playing Cyberpunk on Ultra Graphics with ray tracing on.
You shed a tear a little bit. You're like, this is so awesome.
Did you pick up anything? Read, watch, played? Anything over the week that you recommend to the audience? Anything interesting at all?
Me?
Yeah.
No, sorry.
I also picked up Red Coat from I picked up Red Coat from Ghost Machine.
Okay, nice. How's that?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I kind of dig it.
No, not really. I've just been, I have been looking at the, in honor of the X-Men 97 stuff, I went through and I read the first volume of the E is for Extinction.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
This is interesting. I found that I liked a lot of the stuff in the animated series more. Going back because I hadn't read those, and I got a visitor also. But I felt like there was a lot more, in your face, and you can see everything. You see the attacks and all that. Whereas the originally for Extinction stuff, it's it's kind of a quick bird's eye view, but a lot of it's more hinted and. It's like, okay, well, this is the count of mutants. This is the count of mutants, so it was a lot more, distance and all that stuff. So that's really what I was doing was just reading some of those. A lot of different artwork, different styles, everything from Quinley to Ethan Van Shiver to I forget who the third artist was. So a lot of different penciling styles and all that. Some of them wide range, some very detailed, some really kind of subjective. So
Yeah.
but, yep.
Okay. So like I said at the top of the show, so today's topic is going to be how to get started as a colorist, and we are graced joined by David, who is a colorist and has been for some time. So I guess to set some background, when did you, I guess, first make the foray into professional comics, or at least getting paid to color comics?
So that was 96, around 96. It was at the days of Malibu when they were doing Ultraverse stuff. We were also Marvel had just bought Malibu, so we were doing some of the Marvel books too. Had some fun with the books, the different titles. We also got to do some of the Fleer cards, and come on, there you go. So some of the Fleer cards, and kind of got a wide range because depending on who the editor was, some of the editors liked very 2D flat stuff. They were concentrated on getting the color exactly right more than anything, any kind of detail. And then you had different ranges where you could go all the way into super detailed and all that stuff. So some of the things that I had fun doing was I did a couple of X-Men covers. I did a couple other covers, just miscellaneous Marvel covers. I also did like a promo piece for the Nightman TV show. So it actually one of the pieces they took to to the studio to sell it. So I guess hopefully it was good enough because it actually came on there. Yeah, it was a lot of interesting stuff. When I first started, I bought a Mac. Put myself in huge debt. Bought a Mac and basically tried to replicate one of the Macs, the Image Max books. So there's a lot of hand painting and stuff like that with learning, just going through it and learning it. I had done some very little inking, so I was familiar with that. I was also did some stuff for a local comic shop, inking wise and all that for like newsletters. There's some characters in there. Worked with a friend who did the pencils. Did a manga backup story, and another manga story. So yeah, it's just kind of a transition, and I wanted to start getting into color and do that. So definitely worked through. I've definitely had a learning curve. Got around some people, got some tips, but a lot of it was just jump in and do how you do it. So, and I learned a lot of things with how to incorporate some of the plug-in features to create effects and things like that. So I was playing around with, like, for example, I did this first page of this X-Men Brood annual, and I went through and I did a lot of filtering and blurring and noise and crystallization and just a whole bunch of different textures. And what I ended up doing was creating a basically I was simulating how Alien had that translucent skin type thing. So I would layer it over, and then I would render that with highlights to try and give all of these brood from the X-Men these alien type texture. So lots of playing around, with different things. And I can say my experience with Photoshop is maybe, through that stuff, maybe 10% of all the functionality that program has. So.
Right.
There's just so many amazing different things that are done that you don't end up using, but you play around with other stuff, cloning and stuff like that, too, as occasions come. So.
Okay. So we kind of mentioned at the top of the show that in our pre-stream, I don't know what we call it, the green room, you do primarily Photoshop coloring, whereas a lot of artists now seem to be, dabbling with things like Procreate or other such tools. Obviously, we have our own biases and things like that, but is there a particular reason why you have stayed with Photoshop? Is it just like this is what you know, this is what you have developed a strong skills with, or have you looked at Procreate and said like that doesn't have quite the right tools for you, or things like that?
It's definitely a learning curve. There's definitely seems to be a lot more in Photoshop that you can use, but what little I played around with it has a lot of cool things that you can do to, for the graphic, the graphic stuff in comics that we're doing. There's a lot of stuff that's geared towards that I can see that's, helps. And same thing with, like Clip Studio. I'm nowhere near as proficient as some of the people on here. Tommy is a good example of that. But there's a lot of shortcuts, like being able to fill in areas pretty easy that are behind line art and all that stuff that will help do a lot of shortcuts. But it's like I said, I'm familiar with the way that I do it, so I end up just familiarity. Just do it. It's quicker for me to do that rather than come through and then learn all that stuff again.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So if there was, if you were, if we negate the last 20 some odd years, and tomorrow was your first day coloring, what do you think would be the tool that you look into picking up? Like what software or physical tool, or what do you think would be the first item you think someone who's interested in coloring should pick up would be?
I'd have to say a lot of it would be based off of what you have. So, for example, if you're a person that has a, like a nice, decent iPad Pro or something like that, then I would look at doing the Procreate, because expense-wise, I mean, you've got the program is extremely cheap. If you already have the hardware, then you don't have to worry about that. You just have to look at getting a the pencil if you don't have that already, and you basically have your little portable Wacom tablet right there. But if you're if you're just doing like if you just have a PC, whether it's a Mac or a PC, then you may want to look at something like Clip Studio. Keep your eye out for when there are deals, because there are deals that come up on that. from time to time, and look at that route. If you're really serious about it and you have comfortability on it, then then you can look at stuff like Photoshop, because now it is it's a subscription, whereas like Clip Studio has a version for the PC that is a one-shot deal. Photoshop has gotten away from that. Back when I started, everything was a one-shot deal. So back in the Photoshop 3.5 days and stuff like that. But the subscription does over time add up. So and then you're also looking at what kind of Wacom or tablet type stuff that you want to use. I was gonna show. I'm looking here. There we go. Just out of reach.
Always is.
So I've used this before.
Yeah.
This is a bamboo, an Intuos tablet, a Wacom. You can get any kind of generic ones as well for pretty cheap. There you go. So you've got options like this. The one, there you go. So, come on, TC, you can do it. There
it is.
So like this was relatively cheap, and surprisingly, we got another one that we found at a liquidator's store that my wife got that was like $15-20.
Nice.
It's just it depends on what kind of deals you got. I've also got a tablet like this. This is the Wacom 1. So this is display, so you're going to see what's on your screen. This is one that my wife's used. We got this pencil that's much better than the default pencil. And then we've got, I've got a actual Cintiq, the inexpensive one, but I don't know if it's going to freak people out or not that's doing this, but tilt down. So
nice.
There's that one. So this is what I use on my main system. So I got dual monitors, and I've shared the main screen onto the Wacom, so it's basically duplicating that screen. So
nice.
Now, David, I had a coloring book when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make me a colorist? What separates a person who does it for a hobby as opposed to a person who does it professionally?
Getting other people to hire you to do it. That's basically it.
I mean, do I need to study color? I mean, the barrier to entry for me, who knows nothing except the coloring book, to go into a profession that revolves around color. Like, what are some of the things that you think I need to be armed with before I take the big step into the big boy game, get some money?
Well, you're definitely going to need to have, you should have some kind of experience with color and color theory. Just to get some, I'm not necessarily saying you have to go and take, college courses and all this stuff, but you definitely start looking at things online, see what people have. There's a lot of free tutorial stuff. There's, a lot of things you can do. You just have to, one of the things you have to do is start learning about, how to, play around with boosting things, setting backgrounds back farther, toning things out like that, and making more of the colors pop, towards you. So your main focus is going to bring out those figures or whatever action that you have, coming towards you. Because if you try to make everything look like a Jackson Pollock painting, then everything's going to blur. There's going to be a lot of stuff that just, is on the same plane. So little things like that, warm colors versus cool colors, bright colors versus dull colors, things like that. So a lot of the, kind of color theory helps with doing that stuff.
Now, most people. Oh, sorry. Did you want to go?
I was gonna say, I imagine also that having your inker and illustrator might also help you out along the way, but now it seems like a lot of the rendering and shading is handled by the colorist. So I imagine also having a decent understanding of shading and how light works can also be very important.
Yep, definitely. That does. Going through and getting some kind of hints from the penciling and inking is definitely will help you set where that is. So, where the shadows fall.
How long do you think it took for you to find your voice in coloring? Is that something years? Did you have it as soon as you started getting into it professionally? Like, this is me, this is my signature. Like, when did you come into your style of coloring?
I definitely came into my style of coloring during that initial 2 years with Zebra. Sorry, not Zebra. With my mind is going. With Malibu and Marvel. That was something that it just took a lot of every day hitting it and how can I do it? How can I tweak this a little bit? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? And by the end, I was pretty good with being comfortable with what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's style is different. We have you have a lot of people that were really quick colorists that were knock out a lot of pages. Maybe they're not didn't want to do a lot of as much detail, but they got the base structure, the lights, the darks, and all that, and exactly what the editor was looking for, and they were able to go through. Me myself, I spent a lot more time trying to do a lot of detail work and things, mainly because of what I wanted to learn and what I wanted to do. So.
Nice.
Okay. This will lead into an actual more serious question, but that's the meme question that's in every painter to colorist to illustrator to digital artist, everything that always gets popped around. As a layman, I'm probably familiar with RGB. However, I keep on seeing everyone on Twitter yelling at me to use CMYK. Can you explain the difference and why that is?
It all goes down to the color separations. Back in the day, everything, in the comic thing, everything was pushed to be CMYK because that's what the print process was. Your layers of cyan, magenta, yellow were laid on top of each other to create the colors that you see, and that was in the printing. With a lot of the stuff digital nowadays, a lot of that is moved back into using CMYK, into RGB, and the RGB stuff brings a little brighter. There's some advantages to it. A lot of the stuff on the web is done through RGB, but even on the printing, there is some dulling that happens with the CMYK versus the RGB. The other thing is with the CMYK, there's a traditional thing that we would run into was the large black areas whenever you were doing lines that went through and had two different colors, you could actually see those line divisions under the black. So we had to create a separate selection area called the BB channel, which is a backup black channel that would get put behind the blacks. It would have a small border around it, but that would put a consistency behind the black inks, so you wouldn't see a lot of those lines. You don't have to do that with RGB. You also are able to, I did the covers that I colored for Kalis #2 from the new Kalis series. I went through and I did those in RGB. Stuff that I'm working on, I've been working on for a while. It's still in the CMYK stage, so because I was in the middle of it, I'm finishing doing that style, but I'm switching over to the RGB stuff for new stuff going forward, just because it allows me to push the colors a little bit more.
Yeah. So if I'm starting coloring tomorrow, like I just picked up my copy of Procreate or Clip Studio, and I opened it for the first time, and it asked me to set the color profile. It's fine if I leave it on RGB.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of that, this is the more serious question that leads into. Speaking of that initial setup, if someone is their first day coloring, they go through, they open up Procreate, and that's them to set, they choose their color profile. They now know that they can leave it on RGB and they're fine. And then they immediately ask them to start setting up hotkeys, and they have ads for 50,000 add-ons not showing up. What are some of the without getting like too deep into the weeds, what are some of the settings or changes or arrangements on your Photoshop that you think would really help beginners develop with the software, get more comfortable with the software?
Well,
or streamline the process even.
One of the things that I do is I created a couple of action that I've hotkeyed. One of the things that I think two of the keys that I use very, very often is one is an autofill of the area. So just being able to go through, select your area, and hit a key and paste it. The second one is an undo key.
Yeah,
because there's the Photoshop has the ability to go back. You have a history, and you can go back 30 plus steps.
Yeah.
But your Control Z will only go back one step by default. So you'll find that a lot of times that you'll be dragging the mouse up and go undo again, undo again, undo again, undo again. So for me, I do create keys for going and undoing and continuing it. It's a rather than it's a Control Z, it's a I'd have to go and look at it. I haven't played around with it for a little while, but
Dave is that good. He doesn't need to go back.
No, I mean once I set it, I go.
It's just muscle memory at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's set on the system. Whenever I get a new system, I got a laptop just recently. I had to go and set that on the laptop. But once it's set, I do that. I also go through and I create color palettes, and I use ones particularly for a book. I will develop that as I go along, so I get consistency on skin tones and shirt tones and stuff like that. I typically will go through and break those out by character, and I'll have things like skin tone, hair, eye color, and then things like shirt, pants, shoes, accessories, and stuff like that. So I always do a breakdown of that for each particular character. So that helps me a lot when as I go through the panel and somebody appeared on page 2 and then they don't appear again until page 10. I can go back and, have consistency without having to, shuffle back pages and point sample here and go there for that. So.
All right. Okay. Another thing that I know, it's still a source of frustration, messing up my layers. But if I'm starting coloring, I know that I have a page that's essentially looks like a coloring book page. I should probably leave that as a layer, and I might add another layer to put my colors on. And then from there, I lose track of things and things get mismatched. How many layers do you find that do you end up working with? And do you do like layers for flats, renders, and everything like that? And how do you structure your layers so you don't end up messing up the entire page?
I lock a lot of layers down. Let me actually go through and share my screen here. Window. Let me go ahead and share this. All right, so here I am. In answer to your things, I have a lot of layers potentially on some of the ones here. Let me. A lot of these are not done, but so for like here, for example, find one that's better here. So I keep a lot of layers, and I have a lot of layers here that are, I have hidden. So anything here that has the that doesn't have an eye next to it are layers that are hidden. So like the original line art area original line art layers and things that I've gone through and made line art backgrounds and stuff. So if I zoom in here, like you can see these lines here. These lines here are all part of the line art. So if I backtrack here and I go turn this on, you can see everything's on a flat layer.
Yeah.
So I've gone through, and this is an old style, the way that I did it, where I actually did a lot of cutouts and stuff like that. But what I ended up doing is going through and using the line art and putting color on those to make them so they're there, but they're just not quite as prominent. And I went through and some browns and greens and stuff. I usually play around with that. But by doing that, if you just look at him, for example, he tends to pop a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of that. And like I was talking about this BB channel and all that with the blacks will show if it's not there. So if, for example, I go through here and I unlock this and I say, all right, I want to make this 50%. You can see if I take the BB off, see a lot of this stuff in here, these pronounced lines and all that. By having them in CMYK, those tend to show up behind the black. So to do that, we end up putting this channel here that we don't need. I keep clicking on the wrong screen here because I'm looking at that screen. But by doing this, it eliminates a lot of that and puts a lot of those areas. So this is typically what I would have here in layers and all that. And I tend to work on a lot of stuff, and then I clean and I'll go through, and before I turn them in, I will eliminate a lot of the extra layers and things like that. I wanted to show you this. This is a page 1 from Demon Tales #2. I brought this one in. This is essentially a scan. This is a TIFF. This is if we go here and we go image size here. If we look at this in here's the image size and the pixels and everything here. So this is I was just trying to see image canvas size. Canvas image size. There you go. So this page was scanned at 600 pixels per inch. So this is basically, I was just going to show you this on some steps that I do here to make things ready. So for me, what I would do, for example, is I get this black and white image, just like you scan it on your printer and you bring it in, your scanner function on your printer. And for here, I typically make sure that the blacks are pretty much about 100%. I've had some where if it goes and it's, maybe it's only 85%, in the dark areas that they go through, and when you convert them, you get weird kind of grayscales and things like that. So I usually go through and I may have to adjust things to bring those blacks up, but this one's fine. From there, what I do is I'll go through and I'll go to image, and then I will I'll convert this. So I'll change the mode here to an RGB color. So now I have the channels. If you go into the channels, you have them here. So if I undo this, basically everything's on a single grayscale. So I will go through and I will redo that. And then I've got a background layer here. So on the background layer, I'm going to do a Control A, which selects everything, and I'm going to do a copy. And then I'll go into people have processes. This is just the way that I do it. Is I'll go into the channels here and I'll create a new channel, and I'll go through and I'll paste the image into the channel here. Okay, and then I just have my process here and name this, align channel. I always do this myself to keep, so I know what it is instead of trying to figure it out. And then I'll go back into the layers here and I'll create a new layer. All right. So I'll go into layers, I'll create a new layer, and I'll call line art. Okay, and then once I go into there, I'll go and I will go into select, and I'll load a selection, and I'll go find that line channel and say, okay. Now, if you look here, everything that's a line, we can zoom in a little bit more here. Everything that's a line here is this black is selected, and whereas the white is not. So I'll go through and take that, and load selection. And then what I'll do is I'll inverse it. So I'll go here and inverse it. That makes, originally when I loaded it, the selected area was actually the white, and the inverse actually goes through. You can see the cursor goes from this little lasso. That means this is an area that's not selected, and then it'll change to a box. That's the area that is selected. And then from there, I will go through and I'll use this key that I created, which is the fill, and on the line art channel, and I will fill that color. So if we go through and say, let me undo that. If I hide this background layer, I keep doing it this way, but if I hide it, you can see now when I fill it, it's now pasting that into that layer up here.
Yeah.
So from there, I go through and I go back to the background, and I will select everything, and I will go through and I will paste a white onto that background. So now what I have is I have a line art layer that I can put stuff behind. It's one thing that I do a lot is I will create just a random layer. I'll go through and I will fill that layer with color, for example, and I use that for a lot of cleanup. But you can see everything is behind, behind the line art, and I will always go through and I'll lock the line art. That way, even if I try to take a color here and use a brush, I'll use here. I'll use a big brush here. If I'm on the line art layer, it won't let me do it because it won't let me modify that line art layer. But what I end up doing is I can go through now and I can, if I, let me use a pencil here. If I do it, I can modify the layer behind it. So that's what a lot of it is creating a line art layer that's above, and then you can go and you can fill your stuff in. So this is how I prep the line art and everything, the work for doing these layers. Kind of a little bit of a long-winded thing, but I wanted to show you how to create that. And I don't know if that helps, if that's something you guys wanted to see. I'm winging this.
Fair. Because that ties into the I think is like the natural question. As you said that everyone has a process, and that this one's yours. If I'm learning how to color, is there sort of like some agreed upon standard layers that I need to learn to use, or is it something that I end up having to learn over time?
It really is this this way. I think it's in the industry and what they do, learning from, I don't think it's I don't think it's always something that's just out there that everybody knows and assumes right off the bat, because most people, when they look at it, they wouldn't be looking at anything but, say this, in the line art, and people would be sitting here, on the, just on the background with the line art, and a lot of people may be there and trying to fill things in and go over. But what ends up happening is you start going over your line art and all that stuff. So this is stuff that's out there, and a lot of features like, Clip Studio, for example, has stuff in there. There's a box setting that you can do where automatically will allow you to use that line art layer, and it automatically separates that and allows you to put the stuff without affecting your artwork. But this is the way that prevents, the line art and all that stuff from working, from being affected.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to show was from here, for example, I just keep this layer here. I keep it hidden until I'm ready to use it. And I'll show you what example of why I use this layer is from here. I'll create a flats, and I'll even go through and I'll just lock this. Lock this layer and hide it. And this is my working area. And from here, I don't tend to do a lot of I do a lot of rough stuff when I'm flatting. So I will use the marquee tool, which is, it's a Command M, and I'll draw a box. And I don't really care exactly where the things are here, and I'll throw in a color. Doesn't matter what the color is, I'll throw in the color, and then I may go through and let me get my Wacom pen here rather than that. And I'm not worried about any bleeds and stuff here, but at this point I'll go through and I'll select my area here. And because I'm just doing this, I'm not as clean as I normally do. But I'll just select the area here. And I just want to show you my point is, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to make that a green box, and I'll fill it in. So I'm not spending a lot of time focusing on cleaning stuff up at this point. And, I'll just go through here. And, maybe I'm going to do this here, and I'll go back to this color here, for example, where I'll just go through and drop that stuff in, and just here, and I'm going to go through here and I'm going to make this. Like I said, I'm not hypercritical at this point. So I'm laying colors out. I'm doing everything.
Sorry, Dave. And that's just because you'll clean that up like later on, right?
Yeah, because
you're just blocking it out.
Yeah, and I may just sit here and go, all right, well, say I wouldn't do this as a normal color here for a word balloon, but say I'm going to make this word balloon this color, and I'll trace around whatever it's going to be. I'm doing this very rough here. And I fill it in. Okay. Rather than sitting here and having to keep this clean, all, everything, I will go back and I will use like this, this marquee tool to create a box, and my box is just going to follow the line, and I just have to delete it that once. So my cleanup, I'm not worried about, making a straight line here once, making a straight line here twice, as I'm going along. I just use this, and I make a lot of bleed, and I will go through at this point and clean all this stuff up. So I will just go through here, and it won't really matter, but I will go through and use this to create something to just clean it all up in one shot. so as I'm working, I'm just doing, over the top and doing all the cleanup at the very end. Obviously, once I've done everything with the panel, I'm good to go. So. Yeah. And then it's just, there it is.
There you go.
Delete it. I don't have to worry as I'm going through, say I'm making Demon here. And again, I'm just going to be very, very, I'm not going to be very clean here. I'm just going to run through here and just do this. I will go through and I tend to bleed into the next area, into like his shorts, for example, and I will like I said, normally I would just trace everything, and I'm just doing it really quick right here. But I end up creating this bleed area into the other color, because sometimes when if you're tracing your line, it's first thing is it's double work, and I'll show you this when I do this. But let me just finish doing this this part here. Okay, so let me zoom up here. I have my palette, and I put these are the palettes I was telling you about. So this, for example, this strip up here is all my palette for Demon, and depending on what it is, I have a mid-tone, a highlight, and a dark. Some things like the eyes are red, so I have a dark red, and then I highlight with a white. So I just have, two different swatches for it. But like his regular shorts that he uses, his greens, again, highlight, mid, and dark. So I have a consistency. So I go through here and, I'll go through and do him, for example. Like I said, I don't leave these lines here as I'm doing it. I'm cutting layers into it. But what I do is when I'm dealing with these shorts, for example, and I'll use this purple, for example. If I go through and I say, all right, I'm going to create the skin, and I'm going to do the skin here, and I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to trace, and I'm going to create this. Well, now I'm tracing this one line, but then I have to color the shorts. So you're either having to deselect things or whatever. So I generally tend to overlap the colors. So when I go through and now I'm going to color the shorts, I'm only doing this line once across here, instead of doing it one time for the shorts and one time for the skin tone, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So you're not doing double the work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you can, if you did fill it and you did make a line, you can use the magic wand to go through and remove it. But at this point, I'm just laying everything out on flats. And now at this point, it gets a little bit cleaner. So as you're going, you're kind of, layering things out, and you're getting a little more cleaner as you go along. You don't have to worry, because sometimes when you go through, and I'll show you like here, sometimes whenever you go through and you try and, go up against the line to create something, and you drop your color in, if you look, you've
Mhm.
now got another color in here that, you know, if printing shifts, you could see that or something like that. That's why I always go through and if I do my undo, I either will go through and, you know, maybe take the wand and try and, you know, remove that stuff. But it's a lot of trying to keep it cleaner, you know, and stuff like that. But I do things in sections. And then from there, I will go through and, you know, and you do have the ability, depending on what you do, you can go, for example, into the line art, for example. Even though it's locked, you could do a wand and select an area in the middle. Just know that depending on what your tolerance is on your wand, you can see that it doesn't give you a lot of buffer into it. So you either have to expand it, or I generally will just go through and I will just trace it. And then from there, I will drop a color in. And that's, oh, sorry. I'm on the line. It's protecting me. So the flats, I'll go through and do that for the different areas. Okay. So I just work my way out. I start with, you know, big wide open areas. Like the background just goes over everything. I tend to sit here and do things like things that are behind. So you may have this person here and say they're going to be on this nice fluffy couch here. And, you know, this is another case where I would just kind of blend over, you know, and do the stuff for the couch that's behind the person. You know, just do everything real wide. I'm not curious about the stuff. Obviously, I would do the demon after I do the couch behind him, because I always think of things as, you know, what's in the back. It's easier to select. It's easier for me to go through and select this and then put him in after. But, you know, I can also remove stuff, you know, and then I drop in, you know, a color for the couch. And then from there, I will go through and then I'll say, all right, well, what's behind, you know, for me? So I go, okay, well, his shirt looks like it's behind here, and I'll choose a color. I'll just use this color here. And then when I see it, I say, all right, well, this jacket is on top of the shirt. So from here, since I haven't done skin tone yet, I will go through and I will do the jacket here. So I work in layers and I visualize it. And this is something I've gotten used to over time is, you know, seeing what's on top of what and, you know, and putting the layers on as we go and adding to them. So now, for example, if he's got a brown jacket on, there you go. Sorry, not used to this. I just add the layers as we go, you know, and I keep things as clean as possible. And then I may use a skin tone and sit here and go ahead and pop in the skin tone. So I just work that way through, you know, and then once I have, you know, you can see it's starting to come through. It's, you know, it's just easier for me to do it this way than to try and go, okay, well, I'm going to do the couch here. And then I have to, you know, put this part in, and then I have to put this part in, and then I have to go through here and put this part in. You know, doing stuff in the background is, you know, as much of a big block and then chip away at it is the way that I do it. Yeah. It is a very nice stash.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we'll take some time here to then. So going from what we learned as a burgeoning colorist, I have got my first piece of software and hardware. I've got my book on color theory and watched some YouTube videos on layering and started practicing. How do I go about putting together a portfolio now that I've started working through some of the basic practices?
Well, I've gone through and I have a portfolio of these fiery prints. They're not your standard. They're not your standard. Go to your HP printer and do it. I've actually gone through on a higher quality printer and put them inside of just an art portfolio. And if I have some reference, maybe you have a black and white and you can show a side by side. What you'll find is you
Thank you.
as you keep going, you will go through and build more and more. So, if you're starting out, you may want to have more of that stuff in your portfolio showing, this is what you started with. This is some of the stuff that you've done. And as you keep going, you'll be kind of replacing some of those black and white, before things with more different artwork and all that, and filling your portfolio. Yeah, this one. Yeah.
I think it just proves that you're an artist, though, that you work in the creative field.
Right.
Every creative needs the table.
Yeah, it's all comic stuff. So there's comic boards, comics behind there. So, but then I'll stop here on the flats. Once I get everything flatted, then I will go through and duplicate the flats. And then from here is where I do the colors. And, at this point is where, yes, he does, by the way, he does have three tails. This is where I start applying, and I will lock this, so I'm not modifying it. This is where I start applying the color. So I may do something like a white highlight and something that's going to be along these lines in a darker. There's no yellow in it, so I'll may put some black. You got to really limit the amount of black that you put into it, because if you go like this, you're just going to muddy things up. Mm-hmm. So I just come up with a darker shade, and depending on how you do your style, I will then go and I will take my brush and I'll start at, I think, maybe a 30% or something like that. And I will go through and I'll start doing your shading, and follow the lines.
Yeah.
Looking at, because this is a dark, and you can see that there is some dark on this side. There is some dark here, so it's a little more of dark along. It looks like along this side here, based off of that. But there is some kind of confusing because you do have some dark along here. But typically, I'll go through and start brushing in shadows and stuff like that. Right. Again, this is on my color layer, so at any point, if I need to reselect this, so right now it's selected. If I go through and say I start coloring here and I deselect it, if I try to reselect this, all I'm getting is the areas based off of, the colors that are the same. So I will switch back and I will use my flat layer to go ahead and reselect the area that I need to do. So, and go back to my color and, and continue brushing it, however you're gonna do it. And, just kind of quickly here. Oops. I'm looking at the other screen here rather than the Wacom screen. So I'll just go through and I'll create the areas here. And then at this point, if I'm putting say I'm doing a highlight along this edge here, like a secondary, I will go through and I will go real, oops. I will go through here and do a real dark here. And then I may go through and say, all right, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to put a little bit of an edge here. When I'm working with, I usually don't like to work with a white on color stuff, but if I am working with a white, I have to really bring the percentage down to real low. And then I will start going through and I'll start putting a little bit of a highlight along the edge here. And then what I may do is I may go through here, and the way my style works is I tend to brush a lot of my shadows in, and then my highlights I start to put a little bit of a hard edge on it. So for here, for example, following what looks like on the folds, I may go through here, and I tend to put a little bit of an edge here. I gotta fix this; it's a little bit too far. And I may put a little more of an edge here. And I can either do a gradient, add a low percentage, or I will brush something in, and put a little bit of a harder edge on that. It's a little bit too much, but back that out a little bit more to create the highlights, and I will go through and put, hard edges across here, for example, just the way that my style does it. Just to create some hard lines on the lights to contrast those dark lines. Obviously, you can do some areas in here. As you go farther down, it's going to be a little bit less. So I will just go through and add details, through the highlights.
How long does it normally take you to do it? I mean, you're going pretty fast, but how long would you say? I mean, and again, you've been doing this for years, but how long would you say it would take you to do a page like this?
It all depends on how much detail. It does go through, and it can take. And my problem is I'm slow. There's a lot of people that do this like really quick, and I'm also a perfectionist. Like this stuff, I'm just doing this stuff very briefly to show you how to do it, but I'd be, oh my God, this line, this thing, why is this here, and I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna straighten things out and I'm gonna do stuff like that. It's just for me, it takes me quite a while.
But what is quite a while? Like for you, perfectionist, what is quite a while?
For me, it takes. Well, the hard part is because I'm doing this.
2 days? Is it a day? Is it?
It could be a couple of days if but I'm also not doing this full time.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this after hours. This is essentially job number 2. So
right. Yep.
Yeah, it could take a couple of days.
Okay.
And it's a lot of. There's also a lot of prep work. Say for example, all of these lines, these circles, for example, if I wanted to go into the line art and make those into a channel, for example, that's more detail, and more detail is going to take more time. So a lot of it depends on what you put into it and when you cut off. If your goal is, and I referred to this before, is with like some of the Marvel editors, they had silver rate, silver pages, bronze pages, gold pages, and like platinum pages. Platinum being the higher tier, a lot of detail. If you're talking about things like silver or bronze pages, this is it. They just want flat colors. If you want something that's for example is a let's do a one here. I'll do this stuff. Actually, let me just turn this off. If you want something that's silver, you're basically sitting with a gradient here at 20% and going, there's your silver page. And some editors are fine with that. It's whatever they want to do. They want to see where's the light coming in and where's that stuff. So you are correct. Depending on the paper that you use, that may have a factor of the saturation and all that. And let me undo this. And I'm not going to save any of these changes. I'm just showing you guys as we go. But the saturation level is basically how much you're going in here. So basically adding up all of these numbers to see what your saturation levels are. Typically when I'm doing CMYK stuff, I want to make sure, that does. You also, in response to what was up there, that's why you see things like DC Comics will charge an extra $1 for their covers that have a cardstock versus a paper stock.
I guess also for audio listeners, I should probably read the questions out for audio listeners for the audio. Hart Fisher in the chat. Newsprint sucks up ink differently than a super white 60-pound page. Also, as a publisher, be aware the 4-color process means your book will cost more to ship based on the weight of the ink in the paper.
So you do see price variances on what material is used and all that. But these numbers are all what adds up. When I use CMYK, I tend to cut things off at a total of 240. So, for example, when I use these dark reds, I'm right at that. It's a little hard to see the numbers, but the blue is 25, the red and yellow is 100, and then it's 15 for the black. So I don't want to go more than that because that's going to saturate, really saturate the page. Things get muddy. On an RGB, there's a little more of play there where you can, probably go up to 260. But again, you also want to watch that your black doesn't go too high. Okay. And even another thing that I can point out here is even though this page is currently in an RGB mode, I'm familiar with CMYK. So I have the CMYK sliders, and it's just a setting here where you can change it to be the RGB sliders if you want to go that way. The way I do it is I'm used to visually seeing the CMYK. So even though the page is an RGB, I use the sliders there because it's something I'm familiar with.
I'm glad you explained that. I was wondering that when you first switched it to RGB, I was like, why do I still see CMYK?
So for those of you following along, like we said earlier, if this is your first ever time getting into using the coloring software and you get the setup that asks you to set your color profile, if you stick with RGB, you're going to see the RGB sliders up there. You can set
by
as human
default.
computer.
Yeah. And when you click on the color in here, it will give you the values in RGPs and CMYK as well. So you do have the values in here. If you just go ahead and click on the color up there, it will show you. And you can darken and you can do all that as you go along. But once you want to, on CMYK, you want to very much watch and make sure that your black is not up here in the 60, because you're going to get a real muddied color.
Yeah.
And for example, if I say I take his skin and you're probably going to go, what? If I go through and I make his him very yellow. Sorry, I'm on the flat layer again. Right? And I say, all right, well, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do a little bit of darks, but I'm going to kind of balance it here. And I'm going to go with a brush on 100% here for a dark. I want to see how it kind of goes along that way. But if I go through here and I put a lot of black in here, see how it kind of just muddies it?
Yeah.
So you got to be conscious of what you put in there. Particularly yellows and reds are very susceptible to the blacks. So if I make a red here and I go through and I were to boost a lot of my blacks up here, it's going to and a lot of people use like a dodge and burn tool, which puts a lot of blacks in there. By the time you add the whites, for example, you can get a very muddied. See how it really starts to muddy right here in this area here. So you got to be very conscious on where you place the colors. So like for yellows and blacks, for example, I leave a lot of this mid-tone here and I highlight more sharper areas up here. So it still maintains that feeling of red versus just a gradient that's coming up here and muddying everything out.
Yeah.
So that's part of your color theory stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is when we're talking about that, I went through and I made this. I just picked a random color, but I chose a gray here because it tends to stand the character out. If you go through, for example, if I select these here and I go with the hue and saturation, if I start to saturate this here and change the hue, it's going to tend to make the character not stand out as much as it did before on the background. So you can see that you have everything here is very, even though it's a contrasting color, everything seems like it's on the same plane. But when I undo that, you can see that these areas really make it pop more. And you can, on your saturation here, you can actually even desaturate it even more and lighten it up to make your character get more, pop more.
Definitely.
So again, your color theory stuff. So I'm gonna stop talking for a minute. And Tim, you got anything?
Yeah,
CC, I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, we're coming up to the 90-minute mark, so we'll get to the literal money question here, which is probably what a lot of people are wanting to know. So I started coloring last year. I got my tablet, I got my Clip Studio. I've studied color theory. I've studied lighting. I practiced and built a portfolio. how would I start finding work? How do I find a way to get paid to color pages professionally?
A lot of it's going to be, interfacing with people, conventions, social media, things like that. We've talked about this because CC and I both said that we're not the greatest at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's getting it out there. It's getting it seen by people. It's constantly, just continually doing it and playing around with it to go through and hone your craft. See what the current industry is, because a lot of things change as they go. Back when I was doing this stuff with Malibu, a huge thing was secondary hard light. So you may have your person there that has a hard purple coming from this direction and a hard blue light coming from this direction, where a lot of it now is a lot natural. So seeing what's out there and seeing what draws you to it is going to be some examples on what other people may be looking for, because the editor obviously okayed that stuff to be out there. So that was something that they've approved. You can sit here in hard light, and make yellow backgrounds with orange characters and all that stuff, but that may be not what the editors are looking for. You may find an editor that wants that type, but it's getting out there, getting a whole bunch of different stuff and showing a wide range of things that you can do will help you get potentially get those jobs.
Definitely. And I also I think I mentioned this for every profession so far, but making good use of your online tools. You don't necessarily need to be a social media guru, but knowing to look at the subreddit r/comic book collabs. You'll find a lot of creators there who sometimes you'll find writers are willing to pay to have a team come onto their book, and they're like new writers, so they aren't the pickiest. So if you're just starting out, it's a good place to start cutting your teeth. But also you'll find a lot of been the dial, a bunch of collaboration projects where it is just a bunch of people trying to come together, create an idea together, and make it from the ground up. Usually you're working with a bunch of other people who are either students or just starting out in the field. So it's a really good place to get your practice going and then create a finished product, because that finished product is going to do a lot for meeting with future editors, actually having the complete book to put in front of their face.
Also remember that, where you are and what you want to do, depending on where your career is, that sometimes a paid gig may not be as valuable as a gig that gets your stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I've even seen people that are, established that will go through and want to try a completely different style, that they may be more willing to go through and say, all right, well, I want to try this, and I want to get it out there. I want somebody to do it, and I'm not as critical right now with getting my full rate or whatever. Just here's an example where it's an area I haven't tapped yet, so let me go through, and I'm more willing to just get it out there, without either pro bono or lower pay, just to get it out there so I can practice, or I can say, hey, here's a whole new market. Mm-hmm. So it's weighing, pay versus exposure can help as well.
Yeah. I guess that's something that we should probably hit on for, people getting started as a colorist. The very first thing that happens, the first time you complete something, no matter what skill it is, the first time you complete anything. I've just finished coloring my first page. I hate it. How long did it take, David? How long did it take you to really feel confident in the pages you're making?
Oh, it took me a while. I was very, very rough. Like I said, I submitted things very rough, and because I hadn't done as much practice as I liked. I had a harder time, getting my foot in the door type thing. I spent a lot of times waiting for openings to happen and things like that. But yeah, it took me it took getting into the repetition of constantly doing it and refining before I actually started to get comfortable with the stuff that I did. And there's a degree even now of uncomfortable. Oh no, that's not good enough for me that I still have. So
cool. All right. Any closing thoughts or any other questions, Cassisi, that you have, or closing thoughts, David?
No, it all sounds really good. Sounds more complex than just coloring in a coloring book.
Yeah.
It can be as complex as you make it.
Yeah.
Obviously, working at it and developing things over time. But yeah, the big thing is try not to over, especially when you're starting out, try not to over, perfect everything that you've got, do some stuff, move on to a different type of thing, and that different variation will cause you to, explore new things and, bring up new ways that you do it. So.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys. For those of you listening at home, no matter what podcast service you're listening on, please make sure to leave a review, share it with your friends. It helps a lot. And if you want to chat live, like Heartfisher and others have done today, follow Silverline Comics on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, where we will be notified every Tuesday when we go live. We will be back with a topic on a different Google login, and the calendar is coming up now. And the topic of next week is everything you need to know to get started writing. So that'll be Cassisi and I covering next week, and that'll be a chance for David and Jose to bombard us with questions on the writing process and how much student debt your play will get you.
Well, hopefully this helped. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully, some people learn some stuff. Again, everybody does things different. We have different colorists here at Silverline, and everybody does their stuff differently.
Absolutely.
So it's develop your style, and hopefully what we covered today helps at least get the ball rolling.
Definitely. Okay. Be sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those specific days. You can go ahead and David, what's your social media if you have anything that you want people to follow you at?
I just have just a Facebook page. I am on Instagram, but I don't do that much on it. And I am on Twitter also. But again, I don't. Most of the stuff I do is Facebook, and it's just following a lot of stuff. I'm typically just working on a lot of the stuff. Like I said, I'm very social media inept.
I know. Okay. We'll see you all next week. But until that time.
All right. Make mine Silverline.
Make mine Silverline.
Hi, my name is Paul Kupperberg. Make mine Silverline.